Or maybe I have a broken wheel.
Broke it?
No.
You have to buy it.
I'm trying to wheel the chair in and it's sticking.
What's up, Julie?
Hi.
Hey, Julie.
Hi, ladies.
Jess and Madison.
Julie, when are we going to see you in person again?
Hopefully sometime soon. But I finally scheduled my test, so that's good.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to go yet.
When I'm out, I'll take the truck over.
We can't see you yet, by the way.
Just so they can-
Oh, okay.
We can see you on the phone. I just gotta put you on the computer.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
we're looking at a screen, nothing right now. Okay. So October 3rd, I think my test was, what day was mine? I thought it was like, was it the 4th?
I mean, there weren't many options when I looked. Finally, Boston opened up, but I put in like Dedham. Dedham only had one day. I think Thursday was the only day they were doing testing of this week. And then it was, the Townsend was listed, but they didn't have any openings in the next month.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's funny, I did mine the 3rd, so maybe it's a lucky day.
I hope so.
Here we are.
Yay.
Oh. Who we missing?
John, here he comes. And Mariah's will be here momentarily.
She was here earlier.
Yeah, she just. she'll be right coming. Oh, of course, I'm talking like kitties.
Thank you.
Thank you, we're presenting today.
Oh, what are you presenting?
Disclosures.
Oh, I want to stay for a minute. Oh, I did.
I'm like,
Because you would have been the first one.
oh, me?
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh.
throw us on the bus.
Oh, I was showing how enthusiastic we all are. We're all friends here if I mess up, right?
That's right. For sure.
Well, I'm pretty close to the camera.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get
I'm
started?
always in that spot.
Just double check.
I took your seat. No, actually, you did. Get to switch it up. Don't get water. Everyone looks so sun-kissed. Bronzer.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm sorry.
I was like, why don't I have this one?
Beautiful.
Different color.
Oh,
Are you on track?
I think so.
Yeah. Very good.
I probably like this much water a day. I'm terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That's me close. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm not so- You want to see one? No. No more mustache?
Nah,
Where? Well, the beard.
I was just waiting for the beard to like get to this line to take the mustache off.
All right. That was everybody.
Grant.
Grand.
Great.
Why are you grand and not good?
Okay.
So, did you all have a fun weekend?
Yeah.
You studied hard for this, right? You're ready to prepare. This is all you did all weekend long, right?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Who wants to give it the first go? Jonathan.
I did not study it all weekend, but I think I got it.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna set my timer. Since I did it in 11 minutes, you have to do it in 11 minutes. All right. And I need a pair of glasses to set the timer.
Who's
What if you're not
concerned?
11 minutes?
Then you're fired.
Maybe just, okay. I probably would be like 2
no.
minutes. What if you were like less than 11 minutes? I mean.
You have to
You
go
can
5
be-
minutes on.
no, the point-
Not a second
The,
above.
the point of 11 minutes is just to try and, is to do it succinctly and have a discussion and to be able to convey it, right? real world, it may take longer, it may take less. I'm just trying to get you to the point that you can understand it and think on your feet well enough to be able to say, okay, this is what this document's all about. And that's all we're talking about is the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensing Consumer Relationship Disclosure Form.
Probably depends too on the person they're meeting with.
Of course it does, because if you get an engineer, you will probably take a half an hour, because they'll ask you what every other word means and why the punctuation is the way that it is on the document and everything else. So, all right, Jonathan, I'm your buyer, I guess, or seller, or whomever. So assume that we've been introduced, you can just get right into it and just say, and the next step is, so whenever you're ready, go.
All right, thanks for coming in today. And
My pleasure.
as I mentioned, we have to, but it's also important to go through this disclosure form. It's called the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensing Consumer Relationship Disclosure.
Very good.
And as you may note, it says this is not a contract. So do you understand the difference between a disclosure versus a contract?
I don't.
So disclosure, which is what this form is, would just be an understanding, if you were to sign it, an understanding that I'm passing the information on to you. So it's the passive information from one party to another. So you're not getting binded by this signature, just saying that I gave this to you, we talked about it, you understand it. You also read it yourself and you've never asked any questions about it that you may have. So to go over the basic points here before you read it through fully is that I have to give this to you at our first personal meeting to discuss a specific property, which we're doing today. And that if I was to be hired as your buying agent, as you're looking to buy, I would be giving you assistance in representation, which is what it says here, and we'll get more into what that means. And then these two paragraphs here, pretty simply is that I have to present properties honestly and accurately and disclose any material defects, meaning if I were walking the house with you and I see a water stain and you don't notice it, I can't just be like, oh, like I didn't see that. I gotta say, I want to point this out to you and maybe get it looked at further. Even though I'm not a professional, that's what the next paragraph goes into. So I'm not allowed to perform any inspections, and I can't give you advice on things that aren't directly related to real estate. So legal, tax, insurance, zoning, etc. The things listed here, I would pass off to a professional.
Okay.
All right. And the back of this form, which is the main purpose of this form, is to explain the different relationships that we could possibly have, you as a consumer and me as an agent, if we were to get something signed and you were to hire me as a buyer's agent. So both the seller's agent and a buyer's agent, when signed on, owe a fiduciary, and we'll get to that in just a second. But we'll focus on buyer's agent because that's what we would be entering into if you decide to do so. So I'll be representing you as you're my client, representing you, the buyer. And a fiduciary is what I would owe you, and that is a legal or ethical trust, usually having to do with a financial transaction, which this would be. And I describe it to people as an acronym so you can remember exactly what I owe you, and it's OLCAR. So basically that they're listed here as well, but it's obedience, which means that any lawful instruction that you give me, I have to follow. Loyalty, which means you get my undivided attention. Disclosure, where kind of like what I described before, anything material to the real estate, to the deal, I would disclose to you. Anything about the house that I know, anything that I find out about the home that the seller is selling, or anything that maybe their motivation, timing, or value that hopefully for their sake, their agent doesn't share, but if I come across it, I'll let you know. Okay. Then confidentiality, your motivation, timing, and value, or some personal information about you, I would never disclose that to another party. Okay. Accounting, which it has to do with funds. So when you are interested in a property, you put a deposit down to show your interest, I'll make sure that it goes to the proper place at the proper time. Okay. And the last one is reasonable care. So I'll tell you what you need to hear. Not necessarily what you want to hear, but it helps you make informed decisions.
So I can't buy a 5,000 square foot house for $200,000.
No,
in Andover.
no, you can't. No, and
Let's check it.
Yeah, as much as I would like to tell you that you could, not quite yet.
Okay.
Would you be able to go for that one? So then we have the facilitator, which isn't exactly pertinent to us right now, but you could enter into that with an it's a non-agent, so you could enter into that with someone else, That's basically like an order taker where you just bring two parties together and help them agree, but I wouldn't be representing you in that case. We skip down to dual agency. There's disclosed and undisclosed. Disclosed is legal, so that's the only one that we enter into, obviously. So disclosed dual agency, for example, would be if you're my buyer and you like a house that's being sold by another agent in this company, that would be disclosed dual agency because we are an undesignated agency. And I'll go into that in just a second, what that means. But essentially, our company would be representing you on the buy side and someone else on the sell side. So we do have to disclose that to both of you, that we would be representing both of you. In that case, the first three things that I talked about in the old card would be adjusted a little bit. Obedience, if you both give me a lawful instruction and they conflict, then I wouldn't be able to obviously do both those things if they conflict. Loyalty, undivided attention. I'll give you all the attention that we need to get the job done correctly, but technically and legally I won't give undivided attention because we have two clients. And in disclosure, motivation, timing, value of you, I wouldn't disclose that to the other party because I owe confidentiality to you, and that stays the same.
Okay.
All right. And then back to designated and non-designated. If you flip around here, you'll see that non-designated agency is already checked off, which basically means that when you hire me, you hire everyone in the office. You get Lillian and Eric and Bob and every agent in the building.
Yep.
So we all represent you, and we all work as a team to get the job done for you. So no matter how big another agency is, if they're designated, you only hire that one agent. But with this, you get more. Do you have any questions so far on that? No? Okay, so if you were to sign here, this is just saying, like I said, that you understand everything. I'll give you a chance to read it over too before you do that. And then we'll talk about more of the specifics on this exclusive right to buy agreement. But essentially what it is before we start going over this is I'll work with you if you agree to work with me.
Okay.
So that way my time and effort goes into creating a result for you so you benefit from my work ultimately, and we get the business done together, you and I.
Good.
That makes sense. Would you like to go into this exclusive right to buy agreement and start going over this next?
So I wouldn't ask that question, but I'd just go right into it.
All right, we're doing it.
But you did it with 4 minutes and 21 seconds left. So good for you. All right.
That was well done.
So
That
well
was
done.
awesome.
What did you like about what he said, how he did it?
He's really in detail.
I didn't really miss any. I was like listening for anything missing. And
Minor stuff, right?
yeah, I couldn't pick up on anything specific.
What's your definition of a non-agent? Just thought I'd ask.
A facilitator.
Okay, so, but does that mean it's a non-licensed agent?
So they would be a licensee because these are relationships that you could have with a licensee, but they would not be acting as an agent, that they would not be representing you.
Well, they're acting as an agent. They're just not there's no representation of either party. So just to be clear, because when you said it, the way that you said it, I heard it, maybe others didn't, but I almost heard it as if it wasn't really an agent.
Okay.
Kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
And I never like to use the term non-agent. When I do, I kind of define what that means. It's kind of a misnomer. It's not that they're not an agent. It's that.
In that situation.
And I think it was just a matter as you were going through it, when you said we'll come back to that paragraph, you said it as undesignated, not non-designated, or at least it sounded like on. I don't know if that was the case.
I don't know either.
So here's my question. If you were listening to Jonathan, based on Jonathan, do you think I was really engaged? Now, again, we're not here to determine whether I understand or engage, but that is part of the process. How engaged was I, Jonathan?
Not engaged. So I think that the
And why
extra
is that?
4 minutes would be used to kind of have more of a conversation than a one directional talk like we had. So the extra 4 minutes could be used where I would be talking to someone that hasn't seen this before.
Yep.
So I would check in with them at each point to make sure I understand and get questions.
So
along
that's
the
what
way,
you should
probably.
do regardless of who the audience is. And the reason why I say that is that if you spend enough time with Bob and Lillian and eventually me, you will understand that your job is to just ask questions, right? And by asking questions, you get to determine whether I'm actually actively listening to you or not.
Mhm.
Okay, and this, I'm not picking on you, this is for everybody's benefit, right? We're in the business of sales, and I'm probably the one sales manager, if you want to use that term, that isn't ever going to say to you, tell me what your pitch is or give me your presentation, because I don't believe we're in the presentation or the pitching business. We're in the needs assessment business. I need to understand what your needs are. I need to make sure that I can deliver on those needs, and I always need to be qualifying whether I'm meeting them or not. Okay, and you can only do that by asking questions.
I have a question. You can ask.
Sorry,
have,
you can ask.
Have you worked with anyone?
You
yet?
could ask that.
I think that was one that you had said, and that when I played the thing back, have you worked with an
Yep.
agent already?
Right. So if you notice throughout the course of my regiment, when I did that presentation, I tried to ask questions to make sure that, A, I'm getting, I looked at you, I didn't look away, I wasn't looking at my phone, I wasn't doing any of this. So you thought I was engaged, and I was. I'm not saying I wasn't, but you have to, when you're giving a presentation, for lack of a better word, or you're describing this or the exclusive right to buy agreement or any other contract, you have to know that I'm listening, and you have to know that I'm understanding what you're saying.
Mhm.
Right? And sometimes if I think I'm getting yes to death when I ask the question, or no to death because they keep saying, no, I don't have any questions, then I'll just kind of say, well, what do you think fiduciary is? Or I'll ask them an open-ended question to make sure that they're listening and that they really do have a concept of it. Because ultimately, who's responsible for making sure that's the case? Me, as the salesperson, giving this information out.
Mhm.
All right, so that's not, I'm not cutting you down for you did a bad presentation. I thought your presentation was very good. You clearly know the information. Now I want you to understand that the other half of this has to do with making sure that the person you're talking to or conversing with is engaged and really understands the concept. Because I tell you, if you do, and I'm feeling really comfortable about it, how comfortable am I going to be with signing when you ask me to sign? Sure, no problem. Here, let me sign it. You know what? I don't even need to read it. Just sign it. Just let me sign it. And I'm not suggesting that they should be signing things without reading it. What I'm saying is they should be in a position where they're so comfortable with you based on your explanation and the integrity of how you came across that they'd be willing to sign up without reading.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thoughts, questions?
So a question, when, because this is something that I would do, like if I was sitting there listening to Jonathan, and I thought he did a great job just explaining everything, and I'm just like, say I feel fine with it, could I just interrupt and be like, yeah, hey, I can sign this right now? And then would you just let them do it? Or would you say, why don't you read it over and, give it
I'd
back?
still ask them to read it over, and if they really insisted that, no, I'm okay to sign, say, okay. But remember, anytime that somebody signs something at your request, you're obligated under the law, and company policy, by the way, to give them a copy of what they've signed. Right? Because the last thing you want to do is be up in front of the judge, and the judge says, well, I understand that you signed this, and you signed this of your own. Did you sign this voluntarily? Yes, I did. Okay, did your agent give you a copy of it? No. You're sunk. You're sunk right then and there, especially if it's a disclosure or a contract. So just anytime somebody signs something, make sure they get a copy of it. Whether they walk away with it or they get it immediately thereafter, as soon as possible.
Now, I guess my second question is, say they didn't feel comfortable yet, because say you're just someone that like kind of wants to look over contracts on your own time with like how someone, talking to. So you want to take all this stuff home and then bring it back?
Yeah,
We're okay with that?
Yeah, so it really depends on the nature of the appointment, because sometimes with buyer, and let's talk predominantly more buyer appointments, right? You're bringing them in, you're not necessarily talking about a specific property, correct? Because you've met them somehow and you said, come on in, let's have this consultation. Let me tell you how I work. Here's the state, here's the exclusive right to buy. Now let's talk about what your nice to haves and must haves are. You're probably not setting up to go see properties that same day.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, I don't have a problem. Go ahead and take it with you. What I don't want you doing is I don't want you to go showing a buyer a property where you've not had this conversation and they've not signed off on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? And if you're giving this presentation, the other presentation you're always giving with it is the exclusive right to buy agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to have them take these things home. I wouldn't be showing property without at least this being signed.
Okay.
And they could sign this as a facilitator if they decide not to hire you on the exclusive right then and there. So if you had an appointment for a consultation followed by showings that you set up in advance, you go through this and they say, oh, I'm not comfortable signing, say, listen, I need you to at least sign, let's do this. I'm gonna be a facilitator, so you're not obligated under any circumstances by verbal contract or otherwise. You're not obligated because I've already set up these appointments and I wanna go. I want you to see firsthand how I work, because I'm convinced you'll hire me.
Okay.
Does that address your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Others? Who wants to go next? Go ahead. Of course I am. And go.
So thanks for meeting with me. As I discussed, there's something I have to go over with you. It's the Massachusetts mandatory real estate licensee consumer relationship disclosure. How do you know it's a disclosure? Because it actually says on it, this is not a contract. So it's a disclosure, not a contract. Do you know what a disclosure is?
I don't.
So basically disclosure is the passing of information from one party to another. And that's all that this really is. It's going over all the different possible relationships that me, a licensee, can have with you, a consumer. So we're gonna start on the backside actually, and we'll start with seller's agent. Basically what that says is that I would have fiduciary duties to you, and you as my seller
Fiduciary.
client. So are you familiar with fiduciary?
I'm not.
So I like to go by an acronym OLDFAR. O stands for obedience. Basically means that I have to follow all lawful instructions that you give to me.
Okay.
The L stands for loyalty, which basically means that you're my one and only and you have my undivided attention. The D stands for disclose, and basically it means that I have to disclose everything about the home, all the material defects and whatever there is about the actual property. C stands for confidentiality, and it basically means that I'll never disclose your motivation, time, and value. Next is A, that's accountability, or accounting. Basically means that I'm gonna keep track of all the funds and make sure that the timing on everything is what it should be. And the R is for reasonable care, which means that I'm always gonna tell you what you need to hear and not necessarily what you want to hear. Does that make sense to you?
Those, I think.
Yeah, so what I think, which part of it didn't you understand?
That's a lot of information taken in a minute and a half.
Yeah, there is. So we'll go to the next part because that might help you understand better. So the next one's buyer's agent. So that's basically it flipped. Instead of me representing you as the seller's agent,
Yep.
and you being the seller, it would be flipped. You would be the buyer. The next one is facilitator. It's called, on here it shows as non-agent, but that's kind of silly because it's always going to be a licensed agent. It just says that. So facilitator, you can think of it as an order taker. So basically it's like when you go to a McDonald's drive-through, the person taking your orders isn't doing anything aside from taking your order and passing it along to the next person. So that's what that would be. We never represent people we never act as a facilitator because it's just not how we practice real estate. The next one we're going to skip. So we want to give people our services to the best of our ability. And as a facilitator, we can't do that because, we're not working for you, we're working with you. You know what it means to work for someone and not with them?
I'm not.
Basically, it means that I would represent you, right? Working for would mean that I would represent you. And that means that you have all of the fiduciary duties. Every single letter of old car I would provide to you. If I'm working with you, then I can't necessarily do that. I can't promise that because I can't promise you my loyalty, that you're my one and only, if you're not necessarily my one and only. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah, I think I follow
Yeah, so the next one on here is dual agent. That basically is a mixture of seller's agent and buyer's agent. It means that I would be working for the buyer and for the seller, and not necessarily just me. It would be either myself or somebody on my team because we're a non-designated agency, which I'll get into in a minute. But as part of dual agency, you don't get the old portion of the car, so you don't get my obedience, my loyalty, or disclosure. Do you have any questions about that?
So why wouldn't I get your?
If you think about it, so let's think of the letter D for disclose. I can't necessarily disclose everything because we're representing both sides. So I can't, do you want me to tell the buyer about you if you're the seller and about your different things about your side of the transaction?
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be able to do all of those things. But we make sure that whenever we come across that situation, it wouldn't be me personally handling both sides. We actually pass it off to a team member at our company to really make sure that there's nothing fishy going on to really prevent anything from happening.
So am I gonna be the one being passed off?
Well, it depends on the transaction. Are you my buyer or my seller?
I'm your buyer.
So if you're my buyer, you're always gonna be working with me unless it's one of my listings that you're gonna be purchasing. I always personally prefer to work with the listing because I know everything already about the listing itself, so it'd be kind of hard to represent you as well. Does that make sense?
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna flip over to the front side. One other thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning was that the law actually requires me to go over this with you at our first meeting about a specific property. So that's why we're going over it right now. And on here, there's something called designated agency and non-designated agency. So what I was talking about before is that we're always a non-designated agency, which means that when you hire me, you get my whole team working for you. It's not like you're hiring me and I can't tell anybody else at the office about you. I can go to them for advice and any issues that might occur. I could go to them for their suggestions and all their knowledge, their 30+ years of knowledge. Designated agency, that's someone like, say you were to go to a Coldwell Banker or a company like that where they're a really huge firm all across the country. You go to them and you're not working with, their 100 agents at their office. You're working specifically with that one agent, so they don't have the whole team to back them up. Does that make sense why it's better to be a non-designated agency?
I think so.
All right, so that's basically it. You'll check off here whether or not you're the seller or the buyer, and then we'll be able to get to go to work.
About the same time, so good to go. So how do you do?
Good.
You can get more.
I think everybody needs an injection of caffeine today.
So,
Anything that you change?
I think what he said, that he was supposed to say that thing at the beginning. That which was like the form, but he did fix that.
Okay. Anything else? How'd you like his explanation of dual agency?
I was actually gonna ask if we could go over how to explain that one more time, but I think I'm a little confused of how to explain that, because I thought, is it if another agent in your office has a property that they're listing that your buyer wants to purchase, would that be dual agent as well?
In our office, it's any agent, whether it's somebody else in the office or my own listing.
Okay.
And it's my buyer or somebody else's buyer.
Then that would be dual.
I don't be doing.
Okay, because I think you mentioned if it was, if I'm selling a property and have a buyer interested, it's like made it more about the one agent versus like it's for everyone here.
Yeah, I think
I think that's what confused me.
and that's you run the risk of that, right? Because there were two things in there that I picked up, nuances, and again, good job for explaining it and doing it in a very succinct amount of time. I'd be a little reluctant to have you explain dual agency as you're not getting the old portion of the old car. It's a modified, those three items are modified, right? I still am required by law to give you, to give you obedience, but I also have to give it to somebody else. So obviously I still have to do that, but when the two conflict, then that poses an issue, that poses a problem for me.
Yeah.
Same for confidentiality, for disclosure, I have this obligation to disclose whatever information I know to you, both about the other person and the property. I always have to tell about the property, that can never be withheld, but if I know something confidential about the other party, I can't share it with you, and vice versa. So again, it's a modification. I like the word modification because it gives it the sense that it's not,
just tweak a little bit.
it's just tweaked a little bit, right? And the same for loyalty. The only other thing I might say for loyalty, because it's a little bit of a two-edged sword, right? Which dual agency is. You're in there saying we're placing emphasis on the fact that it's an undivided interest, and that you're my one and only. But then when you get to paragraph 8, and it talks about other buyers and the exclusive right to buy agreement, it says If agreed that, it is agreed that the broker or broker agency may represent other buyers who may be interested in the same or other similar properties, right? Somebody that's paying attention, and if you're doing this right, most people will be paying attention, they're gonna go, wait a second. I thought you told me that in dual agency, I was your one and only, or in the old car, and when you're loyal, it's one and only. So just make sure that there's the additional explanation within loyalty about looking out for their best interests, right? Because when you go to have the discussion about dual agency, I can't be looking out for your best interests and your best interests individually as my one and only, as if you're my one and only, because now I have two clients that I'm splitting that, you know, I'm saying the same thing that you're saying, Luch, but I think I'm saying it a little bit differently and not placing the emphasis on I can't do this. Instead, I'm doing something different, if that makes sense. And it sounds like we're trying to pull a fast one. I'm not, because the concern is this is such a complicated discussion, especially to have in 6 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever time you're gonna have, and even in an hour, people are gonna start picking up and go, wait, you said it was undivided interest. You said I was your one and only. Now that says something different. So if you place the emphasis more on a modification, then I can't do it. And here's what I have to do differently, I think, to get around that whole, wait a second, I got you. You said something wrong or something different. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Did you ask enough questions?
Halfway through is when I remember to start asking questions.
Yep.
So is that like the facilitator part that I remember to start asking questions, I think?
Yep.
So I probably could ask a few more questions, but.
Okay.
Can we just go over one quick thing?
Sure.
I know obedience is following all lawful instruction. So when you're in a dual agency, how can you describe that one again? Obedience?
So one of your meetings when you're dual agency, you have to follow the lawful instructions of both clients, right? My buyer and my seller.
Mm-hmm.
But in the event that there's a conflict in those lawful instructions, I'm not going to be able to follow one and not the other.
Yeah, that's what I have. Cannot follow competing lawful instructions. That's what I got. Yeah, you ready? This stuff makes me, memorizing stuff makes me more nervous than like sitting down and talking. Script.
Sorry, I'm going to get you a deal right now.
That's okay.
So, yes.
I'll go.
Yep, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I liked how he explained or how he answered your question. Well, how would I be the one that's passed off? And he said that
Hey, you know, it's tricky.
if it's my listing, then I would stay with the listing because I know everything about the property. And
Right, so that's the dance you have to do, right? Now, have I ever been asked that? No, because I don't place a lot of emphasis on here's how we do dual agency. It's more about here's what happens in dual agency. Dual agency means that we represent both parties, okay? And it's important for you to know that because at that particular point in time, obviously I can't give you my full undivided attention. You're gonna have my attention. I can't follow your lawful instructions if they conflict with somebody else's lawful instructions, also a client. So there's this easing or this modification of that. The great news is that the law allows us to do this. And I can do this lawfully, I just have to follow a process. We're gonna talk about consent in this other document and that you'll be put on notice when it happens. We're gonna make sure that you have every opportunity to have a private conversation with somebody. Again, I'm trying to de-emphasize the fact that I'm gonna be pushing you off or pushing somebody off. I've never been asked the question, I just figured I'd play with them a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I know you said
well.
I know you said with new agents that we do have to pass that off with
Even
experience.
older agents, I don't want them
It does.
doing it.
Okay.
Even Lillian, I don't want doing it. It's not because I don't think Lillian can do it.
It just looks a lot better.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We establish company policies and procedures for a reason, so that in the event that you get tripped up or you're in front of that judge, you can refer not only back to how you practice, and it's consistent with company policy. You can talk about how you were trained, which is consistent with company policy, and then they put Eric up on the stage and I say, yep, or up on the stand and I say, yep, this is what we train, this is We train everybody, and by the way, let me say you 15 examples that's happened in the last 2 years of how we did this and why we did this and who was involved. Because if I can show that consistency of it, you develop the credibility. And again, I hope you're never sitting in front of a judge. That's not the goal here. But if that's the high watermark that we're training to, you're going to be more adept at being able to manage it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And one more thing, if I can. I just realized that if I was asked, can I have an example of 2 lawful instructions that conflict? That would trip me up, or at least I have to really think about it. So do you know?
So what are 2 lawful instructions that might conflict?
Yeah.
I feel like any lawful instruction that would force you to break the rest of the fiduciary duties that you owe to that other person, basically anything like that. So I mean, you could pick one that has to do with confidentiality. If one client says, you have to tell me the motivation, time, and value about the other client, you can't do that because it breaks your remaining fiduciary items, the other person.
That's not a bad example. Again, 20 years of doing this, 19 years, sorry, of doing this. I don't know that I can cite you a specific example where I've been asked in a disclosed little agency and had 2 competing, conflicting requests for following lawful instruction.
What about, like, you know, if someone said, oh, what are they willing to, something like that as well?
What's your answer when somebody says that? And
If
it's your,
it's a dual agency.
if it's your, it doesn't matter. If
Well,
it's your
yeah.
listing client
Right.
and you're asked that question, what's your standard answer, period?
Can you say the question?
I think I'm trying to think
Well,
what I
it's-
just said.
What would your seller accept?
I'm not able to disclose that information.
Well, of course you have. You've already disclosed it. You've listed it at a certain price, right?
But what they would be willing to sell it for is a different question.
They'll accept $10 million.
They
My
would
guess is
accept
they're getting-
anything,
they could
put in
do it.
your
There's a pretty good
estimate.
chance they're gonna accept the full price or higher. Right? And that's it. And you'll get that, because that question is actually one question you'll get at open houses, and you'll get it more often than not. And it really depends. There's a contingency of buyers out there that, you know, are what I refer to as the smart Alex. They think they know everything and they know more than everybody else, and maybe they do sometimes. But I can remember doing a very distinct, because it was just the guy had a unique voice. He was about 3 foot nothing, but he had a chip on his shoulder that was about 10 feet high. And I was doing this, I opened up this open house early, a different discussion for a different day, because I knew it was gonna be busy. And literally, when I pulled up a half an hour early, there were 5 cars waiting out there. By the time I got in and opened up, these 5 parties had come through, and I was still on the back deck opening up screens and stuff like this. And the guy comes up and says, so, he goes, you realize this house isn't worth what you're asking for it. What will the seller take for it? I said, well, I know the seller will take full price or more. Ha ha ha, no. He said, no, seriously. I said, no, seriously. I said, how early did you get here? He said, I was here about 30 minutes. I said, why did you get here early? Because I figured it would be busy. Okay, and how many people were out there with you? 4 other parties, and how many other people have come through? Is that giving you an indication that the price is off or the price is on? He goes, well, I'm not gonna offer more than, I think the price, it was listed at $499. I'm not gonna offer more than $480. I said, you can offer whatever you want. I can tell you right now, just based on my experience and what I'm seeing, this property is gonna go for listing price or higher. So feel free to put whatever offer you want in on it. You obviously don't want the house if you're not willing to pay the price. And I turned away and walked away. I mean, it's just, some people want to engage you and they're very combative. You have to be very careful because you're always on stage. But slight diversion. Who's next? Go ahead, all yours.
Might as well.
You get us timed.
All right, let me know when you're ready. You're ready.
So,
Oh,
you
oh,
both
it's
said,
me?
I'm sorry.
You're like, sorry, Mariah. I didn't
You
realize
guys find
you
it
were
out.
right
Who do you
below
want?
me.
Who wants to go first?
Julie, you're good. You can
Do
go.
you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it. Ready? Go.
All right, well, thanks so much for coming in. So as we discussed before, this is a disclosure form that I have to give to you on our first personal meeting, which is right now, to discuss this specific property. So the form has a really long name, and as you can see, it's Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensee Consumer Relationship Disclosure. So it says right in it that it's a disclosure. Right underneath, bold and underlined, it says this is not a contract. So do you know the difference between a disclosure and a contract?
Right now.
Okay, so a disclosure is just the passing of information from one party to another, which is what this form is, and just kind of inform you on things. A contract is something that you're binded to and signed legally. So again, this is not a contract. Don't get nervous about signing it. It's all good. So does that make more sense to you now?
It does, yep.
Okay, great. So moving on. So all real estate licensees need to present this form, as I said before, and what I need to do in this disclosure is present the property honestly, accurately, and to disclose any material defects in the real estate. Does that make sense?
It does.
Great. Okay, so the next couple paragraphs just basically tell you about if you were to use different professionals and what I can as a licensed agent do, and what I can do is on the back, what I can't do is on the front. So although I can protect your interests, I can't perform any legal tax, insurance, zoning, permits, and you can go on and look for those, you know, septic systems, wetlands, all that kind of stuff. So if we move on to the back side, which is kind of what I wanted to go over, the different types of agency representation, which you can sign on. Do you understand what an agency is? I know sometimes that's kind of a loaded question.
I know you're an agent, but what is an agency?
So an agency basically is an organizing of transactions. And so I work for an agency that organizes transactions for you. And so if you're represented by an agency or an agent, we offer you a fiduciary. And so by law, we have to offer a fiduciary. So that's another, there's a lot of big words. And before I got into real estate, I really didn't understand them. So are you familiar with fiduciary?
I think I've heard of it on one of those TV law firm show things, but no, I don't know what it is.
Exactly. So quite simply, it's a legal and ethical trust that I owe to you as signing on as a seller's agent or a buyer's agent. And it has 6 parts, and I like to go through it as using the acronym OLD CAR. So I can go through that with you and just, you know, stop me if you have any if you need a further explanation.
Oh, I find that stuff interesting, go for it.
Okay, so the O stands for obedience, and basically I have to follow all lawful instructions that you give to me. The L will stand for loyalty, and that means I just have to act in your best interest at all times. So it's kind of like you're my one and only, but more so I'm acting in your best interest. The D is disclosure, and as we had said before, it's a passing of information from one party to another. So anything that I learn about, I will disclose to you and let you know. Confidentiality. So this is a big one, and this one should make you feel pretty good. So I cannot share your personal information. So there's 3 big ones: motivation, timing, and value. So what is motivation? Basically why you want to buy or why you want to sell. I can't let anyone know that. That's a discussion between us to work on strategy. Timing. So how long you have to buy, how long you have to sell. And then value, what you're willing to pay or what you're willing to list your house for. So the next one is accounting, and basically that's just the tracking of funds and monies between the 2 parties. So when you give me your check for a deposit, I make sure that it gets to the right place at the right time. So that's nothing you have to worry about. And then reasonable care, which basically means I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, what you need to hear, rather than what you want to hear.
I can't buy
So maybe sometimes
what over for $200,000. Tell me what I want to hear.
Exactly. So no, you may want to hear yes, but you may need to hear no. So sometimes we're aligned, and sometimes we won't be. But I'll make sure just to give you, you know, the best possible strategy and give you the best thing that we can do for you. So going through those types of agencies, we offer fiduciary, whether you're the seller's agent. So that means, you know, you're selling your home, whether you're the buyer's, whether I'm the buyer's agent, you want to buy a home, we offer the same. The next one is facilitator. So basically in a facilitator, you're not owed any fiduciary. So I don't owe you any of these things. I am just basically a facilitator, or that kind of middle person. So if you think about it as in a drive-through, you order, say you went up to Starbucks, you said, I want a latte. I said, great, you have to pay $5.50 for this latte. And that's basically where my job is. It's still a licensed agent, but they're just not acting with a fiduciary in mind for you. Any questions on those 2 or facilitator? Nope. Okay. Great. So we're going to skip the designated seller and buyer's agent for a second and just go right into dual agency. So basically, dual agency is representing both the buyer and the seller. So if you've driven down the street and you saw other listings for Lillian, say I'm your buyer's agent, but Lillian has a listing and that's one of my listings, or maybe it's someone else in our agency. Basically what happens is that's disclosed dual agency, which is legal, and that's what we practice. Undisclosed dual agency is illegal, and we do not practice that. But if you want to buy or sell something within the same agency, then that is where dual agency comes into effect. Does that make sense, or do you have some questions on that?
So a little confused.
You're still a little confused? Okay, that's fine. So what are you confused on? Just the way dual agency works?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I
Okay.
get that you might have something, you're working with me, but somebody in your office, or you are representing the seller, you're saying I can still buy that and you can still represent me.
Correct. Yes.
But you also represent the seller.
Exactly. So what happens in dual agency, the fact that we would be representing both parties in this, is that there's just a modification to that. We still offer you fiduciary, but there's a little modification to the old part of the fiduciary. So the obedience, I can't follow two lawful instructions. The loyalty, obviously, I can be loyal to both, but it's not an undivided attention. That's why I'm acting in both parties' best interest. And then disclosure, certain things I can disclose, certain things I cannot. So it's based on the property. Other than that, the fiduciary is the same, and we still offer a fiduciary for both parties.
Okay.
Are we not confused anymore?
I was born this way, but I think I'm fine now.
Okay, great. So moving on, so when we said how we skipped the designated sellers and buyers agency, so when we talked about dual agency, we practice in a non-designated agency, which means that's why we can practice the disclosed dual agency, because once you sign on with us, so I become your agent, you not only get me, but you get Lillian, and you get all of the experience behind us. So if there's strategy, if there's any issues or anything like that, you have all that experience behind you instead of just one agent. And then in the designated agency, which you can see next to it, which we don't practice, that's like if you looked at Coldwell Bank and they have a ton of different agents all over the place. When you sign on, you only get that one agent. So even those 100 agents that work in that same office, they cannot discuss your property or help each other strategy and kind of give you the best service possible. So moving on with that, once you decide whether you're seller or buyer, you'll check that box and then you can print and sign. But feel free, if you have any questions, please let me know, because I wanted to make sure that we go through. It's not only something that I like to do, but it's also required by law for me to go through each part and make sure that you understand everything before you sign it. But feel free to read it through and sign at your convenience.
Sure. How'd Julie do?
Really good.
8 minutes, not 8 minutes. Good job.
Good work.
So any critiques?
That should be great.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. A little bit on the dual agency, because, and again, dual agency is so hard to describe in such a way that it makes people comfortable. I always like to blame the state, because the state actually allows us to practice dual agency unlike an attorney, right? And it allows us because our job description is what? Is to bring
people
together, right? So I always, you know, if there's ever anybody's kind of not quite getting dual agency, I'll certainly bring that up, that the state allows us to do this as long as we're doing it in a systematic, approved way, which is to make sure that you're aware of what it is, that we have your consent in advance of it, and that we're providing notice of it in writing to you no later than the time of offer. Okay. Again, I'd certainly look to, I thought it was a good job. You really know the information. I'd spend a little bit more time asking questions. You know, especially as you went through Old Car, you kind of went through it. It was a good explanation, but you didn't really qualify whether I was catching
Tuning
it.
in.
So
Mhm.
again, sometimes you don't need to go through old car because somebody says, yeah, fiduciary, I get it. I'm an attorney, I understand. I don't think you need to go through the whole old car situation. So you do need to kind of know who you're working with and what their background is and so on and so forth. But just to kind of put it out there. But overall, good job. So well done.
Thanks.
Right. All right, are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
All right. So here. You're off and running.
Hey, Eric, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. So thank you for meeting with me today. Since we have found a property a specific property that we're gonna go look at, I just have this quick form we have to go over and make sure that we understand. And it kind of goes over the different ways that I can represent you, and work with you and vice versa. So this form is called the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensing Consumer Relationship Disclosure. It is not a contract. Do you know the difference between a disclosure and a contract?
I don't.
Okay. So a disclosure is just basically information being passed from one party to another, and making sure that you understand that information. Let's see. So if you flip this around,
Okay.
it goes over the types of agency representation.
Mhm.
So how I can represent you. You're a buyer's agent. You're buying a house potentially. And then there's the facilitator, which doesn't allow me to use any of the tools in my company really that I have all the information for and things like that. It's more of like me taking an order for you. So I don't typically like to work in that fashion because it doesn't allow me to do my job fully and give you the best experience, I guess you could say.
Okay, how so? Not sure I follow.
So it doesn't allow me to use all of the necessary like tools that I can provide for you. So instead of just you say you want a house, basically going up to and taking an order, I would be like, okay, here's your house. It's for X amount of money. It doesn't really allow me to negotiate or use any of the things that I've been trained on and skills to get you the best offer or the best home or things like that. Does it make more sense to you?
Yep.
Okay. We're going to skip the designated sellers and buyer agent section. We're going to go down to dual agency. So dual agency is bringing two parties together. And it is a way for me to represent both the seller and the buyer. So I'm representing both parties.
Okay.
With all of these, I have an obligation to you, and that's fiduciary obligation. Do you know what that is?
I don't. What's fiduciary?
Fiduciary. So it basically is an obligation that I owe to you as my potential client. And it basically means that I owe you obedience, so that I follow all your lawful instructions, and loyalty, so I act in your best interest.
Okay.
And then disclosure, so I don't give any of the information that you tell me as my client to the seller or the opposite party, so that the information that you give me doesn't affect their motivation, the time, and the value.
Okay.
Then confidentiality, so I'm not gonna disclose any of the information you give me about you, just about the property.
Okay.
And I give you all the latent defects about the property, things like that. That I record all of the information and transactions accurately and follow up with that accounting and things like that. And then reasonable care. So basically I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the accurate information.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Just the facts.
Just the facts.
Just the facts. Okay.
So going back to dual agency, with dual agency, some of that fiduciary is gonna be slightly altered. So for obedience, I can't give two parties contradicting information or contradicting instructions. So I still owe you off that obedience, but only in a way that acts in both parties' interests.
Okay.
The loyalty, I can still be loyal to you, but I can't be fully loyal to you because I have to worry about the other party as well. So I'm worrying about two parties. I can't do just one, you know what I mean? And then disclosure, I can't give your information to them and then their information to you. So I just basically have to act in both of your best interests while staying lawful and neutral is the best word to describe it. Does that make a little more sense?
It does.
Okay. So if you flip this page around, and you go down halfway, you're gonna see designated agency and non-designated agency. I work as a non-designated agency. So basically what that means is instead of hiring just me, you get everybody that works at my company or my brokerage. So it has all of our information, and if I need help with something or you have a question that I can't answer, I can go to somebody in that agency and ask them and get the information needed. So it happens very, very easily if I have, if there's an issue or something like that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. And did I miss anything?
What you do?
I got nervous.
That's okay. Did it about 8.5 minutes.
It's a lot of information
It is,
to go
for sure.
over, so I understand the nerves. Can they do the specific?
Okay, so a couple of things, just generally speaking, because it triggered when you said something, it triggered me.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that when we're talking about this thing called fiduciary, the reason why we prefer to act or the way that I prefer to operate is that I want to be able, versus being a facilitator, I want to have that fiduciary because that fiduciary not only holds me to a higher standard in terms of the standard that I've held in terms of the performance and how I work with you, but more importantly, I get to leverage and use my market knowledge and negotiating skill to your benefit.
Okay.
Okay? So it's more of a selling point than it is, it's, this non-agent is a glorified order taker, that's exactly right, but it also doesn't allow me to use my market knowledge and negotiating skill. What do I mean by that? Well, when we sit down and you decide you want to make an offer on a property, if I'm a facilitator, I can give you comp information, but I can't go through the comps and give you my interpretation of the comps. Okay? We can talk about what you want to offer, but I can't give you some different strategies and what the risks and the rewards for those strategies are. Why? Because I'm not working for you, right? And the law is very clear on my fiduciary. When I have a fiduciary, I have to do that. And so, especially in today's market, if you don't have an agent that's working on your behalf, good luck getting your offer accepted because you're going to be one of 9 or one of 20 or one of 50 or whatever. It's probably not going to happen. And if somebody's telling you they're a facilitator and they're doing that stuff, then they just don't know what they're doing because they don't understand fiduciary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's important. I don't think you have to emphasize it, but you have to be ready to emphasize that because sometimes people will latch on to the non-agent. What does that really mean? What is it? How does that mean? It means there's no fiduciary in the transaction.
Okay.
You're a glorified order taker. There's no, remember, it's the opposite. You either have a fiduciary or you don't in the transaction.
Does that make it illegal to do those things that you were just saying in terms of your interpretation and advice? If you're a facilitator, is it illegal to give your interpretation, advice, and analyzation?
Yeah, you can't because now you're giving what would be referred to as client level services because client implies what? There's a contract. If there's a contract, it implies that there's a fiduciary, right? And you're representing them. All those words are tied together, correct? Mm-hmm. So if you're out doing that, but you don't have a contract, you're giving a client level services when it's really just at a customer level relationship.
Yeah.
Yes, Julie.
So, have you ever gotten the question, because it just kind of popped into my head when you said,
I'm about to.
people get stuck on the facilitator, that people would rather have a facilitator, like have they ever asked you, oh, so if I have a facilitator, then I don't have, say they're a seller's agent, oh, then I don't have to pay a commission? Because I feel like the people that are selling, like no one wants to pay more money than what they.
Sure, so
They
what
have
do you
to.
think the answer to that question would be? I've
No.
not been asked that, but what do you think the answer to the
Is
question
it
would
a
be?
buyer? Is it a buyer that you would be working with?
You tell me, either scenario doesn't really
I mean, if it's a buyer that you'd be working with, it's not like they're paying the commission
Alright,
either
so let's say
back
it's a
10
buyer.
times. So you'd say, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you're not the one paying the commission 9 out of 10 times, it would be the seller paying it.
And so here's what my answer would be. The reality is that I generally don't work with people that don't want to hire me. Because if you don't want to hire me, there's no commitment from you to me, but you're asking me for a commitment from me to you. And you want to leverage and use my experience and my market knowledge, which I have taken years for. In your case, you're going to say, you're asking me to leverage my company's market knowledge and negotiating skills to your benefit, but you don't want to commit to us to work with us. Okay? If you don't, that's okay. But remember how I started this conversation. You're going to choose to work with me, I'm going to choose to work with you, or I might choose not to work with you. And this would be a case where I choose not to work with you because I prefer to leverage my market knowledge and negotiating skill, but I'm looking for a commitment, a forward commitment from you to work with me by virtue of this contract. Now, separate from all the discussion we're having, why would we want to do that? Because remember when we were talking on Friday on how do we get paid, yeah, you might get something from the transaction, but what if they're only offering 0.5%? Is that worth your time?
No.
Right? Or is it worth your, let me ask you a question, is it worth your time to play Russian roulette, not knowing what you're gonna get? Because you might get 3, you might get 2.5, you might get 2, you might get 1, 1.5, you might get 0, who knows what you get? If you're not putting these people under contract, you have no idea what you're working for.
Mm-hmm.
So your cost, which is what is your cost when you are operating, because you're operating as a business, what's your cost when you're working with clients? It's your time, and you can't get the time back. It's your market knowledge, right? It's your strategy, it's all of that. And so why would you want to put that at risk by not having somebody hire you? I've done it, it's painful. It's just painful. And each of you sitting around this table and on the screen will do it at least once in your career. I promise you, you will. You say you won't, no matter how much I ask you not to do it, you'll do it. But the one time you do it, you'll never forget it, and you'll never not have a buyer agency signed again, ever. All right? Because listen, forget the fact that you don't want a variable commit. You want to know what you're working for. This also makes sure that it doesn't guarantee that you get paid, but boy, it lessens the odds that you're not going to get paid. Right? You spend 40 hours with somebody and you take that Sunday off and they go to an open house and buy that property. What's your time worth then? Right? And so what we're trying to teach you in all this, including through the agency, which is just, hey, you have to do it, but it also makes you more comfortable in having the discussion about the document we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, is you got to know what your self-worth is. And so when you flip the exclusive right to buy agreement over to paragraph 6, or if you're in the exclusive right to sell agreement, paragraph 2, and you're talking about the fees that you're going to charge and that they're going to be obligated to pay, you need to do that with confidence, knowing why you're worth it. Because if you don't, you're going to stammer and stumble and people are going to go, okay, let's negotiate. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who's next? The timer ready? And you're off.
Thank you for coming in today. Did you have a nice long weekend?
I did, thank you.
Awesome. Now, I hear there's about 3 things that we're going to discuss today.
Okay.
One of them is this disclosure form. It's actually called Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensee Consumer Relationship Disclosure Form.
Okay.
It's a really long name. We're also going to be discussing the way that I work and what you're looking for.
Okay.
So, starting with this form, I have to give you this on our first meeting before we look at a property.
Okay.
So that's like what lawfully what I need to do. So we're gonna be going over it, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll ask you throughout
Sure.
the process if you do have any questions.
Okay.
So we're gonna start on the back. So since you're looking to buy a house, we're gonna talk about that. So you are able to hire me as a buyer's agent, and if you do hire me, I will be owing you a fiduciary. Do you
Okay.
know
I don't.
what the
What was a fiduciary?
So it's basically a legal and ethical trust. So there's professions that you have to have monetary transactions for, and that's one of them. So with fiduciary, there's an acronym that we like to say, it's called the old car. So
Okay.
there's 6 elements that I will owe you. One of them is obedience, and that's where I will have to obey all lawful instructions, like very much by the book.
Okay.
And then one is loyalty, where I will be acting like you are my one and only client. I will have your best interests in mind,
Okay.
and you will always come first. And then there's disclosure. I will have to disclose all information to you, very much similar to this form because it is a disclosure form. So anything that I need to tell you, you will know. And then there's confidentiality. So there's 3 things that I'm not able to disclose, or anything you tell me that you don't want me to disclose, I will be loyal to you. One of them is motivation, your motivation to sell the house, your motivation to buy a house, the timing in which you want to do it, and then the value, so what you're looking to get for the house. I'm not able to disclose that with any sort of party.
Okay.
And then there's accounting. Going through this process, there'll be a few checks or any deposits, and I will handle those for you and get them in a timely manner. And then there's reasonable care, and that's basically just saying, I have to tell you what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Those?
So then the seller's agent is vice versa, so that would be me if you were looking to sell your house, so
Okay.
I would be your seller's agent.
Okay.
And then with a facilitator, there's actually what we described before, no fiduciary. So I would be basically acting as what's the word? Order taker. So if you go through the drive-through and somebody takes say you take your order and you're like, oh, I want this and that, and then I just give it to you. I can't negotiate on any property. I can't pretty much use any of my skills for you.
Okay.
And then we're gonna skip this until the end, and then we're gonna go on to dual agent. So dual agency is when I work for both parties. So I would work for you as a buyer, and then someone else in my company would work for the seller.
Okay.
And there's a little bit more some things are, I literally wrote down the word, now I don't remember.
So look at it. What do you write down?
Things are adjusted, maybe that was what the word was. So basically the obedience and the loyalty and the disclosure are all a little bit of an adjustment because I'm working for both parties. So, and do I have to say this when I talk about dual agent? Do I have to say I can't give you the old and old car? Or
You don't have to. What I found over the years, giving a brief explanation avoids the question now, or it surfaces a question now that you can address, but it always avoids the questions later if and when it happens. They're gonna go, oh yeah, you told me about that.
Okay. So I'm not able to, if anything were to arise as a conflict, I wouldn't be able to give you all my undivided attention, for example, in loyalty. because I have a different party, and vice versa when it comes to disclosure, I'm not
So I
able
would say a different party, I'd say I have an additional party.
to,
Right.
additional party, okay.
Because by saying I have another party or a different party, it makes it sound like you have to go to them before you come to me versus it's both of us.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
All right, so an additional party. And then the similar situation when it comes to disclosure, I have to disclose all the information to you, but I can't conflict the additional party.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then we're gonna move on to the front of the form. And if you see here, there's a check with non-designated agency. That is the agency that I am a part of. And that means that when you hire me, you get our entire team. And we have about 20 agents, and you will have the information and knowledge and strategy from all of them. A non-designated agency is something you're probably familiar with if you've been looking around, Caldwell Baker. They don't, if you hire one agent, you need to get that one agent. So there's that. And since you are looking to buy a house, you would check buyer's agent.
How'd you do?
I didn't do as good as I thought I was gonna do.
It's always harder, like you think in your head and then say it out loud, it's always harder.
I was rehearsing in my mirror because I was watching the thing and I was like, oh no, we have to do that on Tuesday. So I was rehearsing in my mirror. I was like, I feel like I can do this, and nope.
No, you did fine, you did your best.
Okay.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up, right? These are hard concepts to get across. They're hard concepts to understand. One, they're harder to describe and get other people that have never heard of them before to understand them, which is why I take, we've been at this for the better part of a week, right? In terms of trying to get this. You guys knew what agency was when you walked in the door because you either took the classes or you've already taken the test. But it's another thing to actually try to explain it to somebody, and that's why we want you to go through this process. I'd rather have you feel awkward with me than with a client, or I'd rather have you stumble and stammer a little with me than with the client. You're gonna stumble and stammer in your first session or 2 sessions. It's okay. Okay? There's nothing that you can do that we can't fix. I just would prefer that you get comfortable with it. And I'd certainly say you should practice your consultations, once we get through the agency, the system right to buy agreement, you guys should start practicing your consultations and role playing so that you all get comfortable with it. And you really got to be tough on each other. So who's ever playing the client really needs to be that, the jerk, if you will, and just kind of make it really hard, because I'd rather have you be hard with each other than get into a situation where the consumer is really hard on you and you don't know how to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But I thought you did a good job.
Everybody's doing really good today compared to Michael and Connor their first time. You guys, if only we had that on recording, really.
Yep.
Good.
So it's, wow, time's flying. It's almost 3:15. I've got to take one call, so you get a momentary break.
practice.
You can
Can I
practice.
practice?
So, but let's take a 2-minute break just so I can take this call and keep this together.
Okay, we're gonna practice the real one. Thank you so much.
No, we're back.
Are you excited? Yes, this is your first property? Yes. Oh, wonderful. So I'm gonna, if you just want to, what that means, I just want to go over.
They set all the medication on the side.
I make the hearing that you have
It's not like that.
ceiling watch.
When you sign it, it's
And
not
then,
binding, so it's just
forget
passing
whatever.
information to you that you need to know. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So,
It's
and we're
happening
discussing a
on the-
specific property,
Yeah,
so
let's
that's
check.
why we have that in first meeting. So I,
Sometimes
by law,
black out
have
and
to
you can remember
present,
that same
properties
thing.
honestly to you and accurately and disclose any material defects in the property. So that's what I owe you, but if you, have questions about septic or like paint or anything else like that, that's something that a hired, like a licensed person in those categories need to do. So I can't provide that for you. So let's turn the page around. Did I forget anything yet so far? No, don't think so.
No.
Okay, so since you're buying a house, I would be your buyer's agent, and what I would owe you is fiduciary responsibility. Are you familiar with that term?
No, tell me about
Okay, sure. I like to remember and explain it with old cards, an acronym meaning obedience. I have to do all lawful, you know, what's the word?
All lawful instruction.
Follow all lawful instructions that you give me. Loyalty, I have to give you undivided attention, you're my one and only. I'm like saying it in my head, D.
When I was doing it too, I was like, kept forgetting what letter I was on.
I know, that's
Oh my
what
God,
I'm
I
doing.
said OLDCA.
So that's what I'm doing. And D is disclosure. So I have to disclose any material defects in the house. If I see something, latent defects, if I walk into property and there's a hole in the floor, you know, of course I will need to tell you if it's to my knowledge. And okay, car. And I owe you confidentiality, which means that I can't discuss your reason for selling, you know, the timeline and how much you were willing to accept. Value, I'll say value. So motivation, time, value. So I can't disclose that with someone else because that's your trust in me. Cool. This is terrible. Accounting. So anytime we have anything to do with financials or escrow accounts, I will ensure you that I'll get it to the broker in timely manner. And then reasonable care, which means that anything, I have to tell you what you need to know, not what you would like to hear. So if you know, that's my honesty towards you. I'm terrible at this.
I thought I was terrible looking.
And then if you look at the facilitator, that means that I would just be helping you out. I wouldn't have any fiduciary responsibility to you. So it's like taking an order if you go to your Starbucks
That's
drive-thru.
what I forgot.
Yeah.
Order taker.
Yeah, I'm an order taker, so if you go to like Starbucks or something, you're not gonna negotiate the price. And I can't use my expertise. So I don't think it's a great, I think you would much rather have a buyer's agent, because I can use all my knowledge to help you. And then there's disclosed dual agency, and the reason I say disclosed is because undisclosed dual agency is illegal. It should never happen. So that means that if you're interested in a property that someone in my brokerage is listing for sale, we would need to let you know that. And we'll have you fill out, actually, there's a new form for that we would go over at that point in time. But do I have to get into anything more dual?
No, I don't even think you even have to ever mention that form.
Okay.
Oh,
And then there's designated and undesignated. So if you flip over, we see that we have non-designated agency. That just means that when you hire me, you're hiring Lillian Montello's whole team, her whole team. So you get, you know, all of us. So we have any questions, or you know, I'm trying to think how.
Whenever I say it, I always say we're non-designated. So when you hire me,
You're hiring.
you get the 30+ years of knowledge and experience from the entire team.
Okay.
Something like that. It's like always, and like you'll never tell anybody that like this is your first year or anything like that.
No.
But a lot of times, like people that you'll be working with, they'll know that. Well, I guess it's, I don't know. They'll know that you're new into it. So by saying that you're basically tapping into all the other experienced agents, then they could care less about you being on year one.
Right. So you'll get the expertise of all of us here.
Yeah.
So other agencies don't always do that. So when you hire them, you're just getting that person. So I think it's much more to your benefit to get all of us. And the other thing I didn't mention with the dual agency is when you're doing a dual agency, I can't give you the undivided loyalty because I'll be representing two parties, and I cannot follow competing lawful instruction. And I also have to stay neutral, and I can't share. Not talking it through. I can't. The other party can't share personal information with the seller.
Discloses material
Yeah,
defects about the
so-
property, not about the seller.
Right. So I can disclose material facts about the property, but nothing confidential between the parties.
Yeah. So with dual agency, one thing that I said that he was saying not to necessarily word it as is don't say that you can't do the old part of the car.
Okay. Yeah.
Say that it's modified. So it's,
Modified. That's the
was
word.
the word.
I couldn't think of it.
yeah. So there's just a little bit modified.
This is not easy for me. You did a good job.
You did a good
You're
job,
not nervous at all.
Jonathan.
I'm like nervous.
I was so surprised like how it came out rather than how it was in my
But I don't,
I get nervous, but I feel like if I was in front of an actual customer, I wouldn't get as nervous because they don't know the
Yeah, I
exact
did a
topic.
couple pages
Yeah, I
before.
just, I get nervous when there's
And
like
you're deleting
a
some
bunch of
stuff.
people.
I'm just gonna stretch my legs. I hope I didn't
Oh,
get that.
yeah.
Oh.
I know you
The
know.
sun is
that,
like-
you do.
Anywho,
oh, just a little bit.
just gotta keep practicing,
I don't
yes.
know, everything else in my bag.
What?
I said I used to have all
Maybe I
that
am.
else in my bag, and I try to be organized.
I know.
I've done it a couple times, but I haven't like practiced it. I don't even remember that we had to do it today. I completely forgot.
Yeah,
I-
Jessica's saying
it's-
now that.
Well, it's easier for me though, because I know like, from being here for 4 years, I know like the concepts of everything, so it's easier to like roll it together.
Yeah, I was like trying to like, when I was talking, thinking, I was like, oh, did I go over that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I got a little lost.
Yeah, definitely get lost.
I trip up. I'm very bad. Like I can never be an actress because I'm not good at reciting lines.
Yeah, I think too, it's hard to like memorize what spot you're on and what the next thing you're about to say is,
Yeah,
with also having to then ask questions and engage the person.
yeah.
That's where I kind of like kept forgetting to ask questions because I was so focused on like the next thing that I was about to say.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought it was,
That's just
I
all
trip over
concern.
myself, and sometimes I don't know how to explain things well, but it's like, oh.
it's like one thing that, it's weird because, I mean, I've had several presentations before and I've never really had that like issue, like for school and stuff
Oh,
like that. But
Yeah, you did
I
present-
stumble.
But like you can look at like the what's it called, the screen or something, so if you're stumbled or like you're able to have note cards or stuff like that, so in school I didn't really have a problem, but like when you're like, oh, like you trip up on words, you're like, just kidding, I actually don't.
All right, Jessica, you're up.
Okay. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
I am ready. Thank you.
No timer? No, I'm just kidding. I don't. Why am I getting myself in trouble?
You are.
I know. Well, I
I
think I'll be.
appreciate your
I
honesty.
think I'll be like less time, like too little. I'll rush. I'm trying not to rush through it.
Ready,
Oh, yeah.
set, go.
Hi, how are you today?
All right, how are you?
Thanks for coming in. I'm doing well.
Thanks for having me.
So is this your first time buying a property?
I've actually bought a lot of property in
Okay,
my
so
day.
you're a pro at this.
I am a pro.
And I'm guessing you've seen this form before that we're gonna go over right now.
I've actually, what is it?
I hope you have. It's the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensee Consumer Relationship Disclosure.
Can't say I remember that, but
Try saying that 3 times fast. So it's not a contract. What it is it's disclosing the relationship that we would have. So it's non-binding.
okay.
And when you're talking about a specific property, I have to go over this with you so you understand it and acknowledge it. Is that everything good so far?
So far,
Okay, so what it says is I have to present all the properties honestly and accurately to you.
Mhm.
And if I see any material defects, I have to let you know.
Okay.
So if there's anything else like septic problems or lead paint, those that you need a licensed person that's an expert in those categories.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess so, sure.
Wonderful. Okay.
I've done it all, so I don't need any of those experts.
Okay, so you know what to look for then
That's
when
what
purchasing.
I tell myself.
That's great. So if you flip the contract, I mean the not the contract disclosure.
You
sorry,
caught
I
yourself,
caught
that's
myself.
good. You caught yourself, that's good.
So you're buying, so I'm your buyer's agent. I'm a seller and buyer's agent, and I owe fiduciary responsibility to you. Do you know what that means?
I think I'm familiar with the term, but why don't you remind me?
Absolutely. I like to remember it with old cards and acronyms. So obedience, and that means I will follow all lawful instructions from you.
Okay.
Loyalty, so you'll be my one and only, and I'll be loyal to you. Disclosure, so anything I know about the property that I think would be in the best interest for you to know, I will let you know.
Okay.
Disclose information. I owe you confidentiality, which means that I won't disclose the motivation, time, or value.
Okay.
So I won't there's a reason you want to sell, I would never
Right.
tell the other party.
But you're not the buyer's agent, so.
Yes, anything confidential, how much you're willing to offer,
Okay.
things like that, I would never say to the other party. Accounting, so anytime there's money involved, whether that's money into the escrow account, I'll do it at a reasonable time, like right away. And then there's reasonable care, which is anything that you need to hear that you might not want to hear, I have to tell you.
Okay,
So does that make sense for fiduciary?
I think so, yeah.
You understand that? Wonderful. So I'm going to go over the next type, facilitator. So that means that I don't owe loyalty to either party. I'm kind of taking an order. So if you go through the drive-thru at Starbucks, you place an order, you pay $3 or actually $5 at
Right.
Starbucks, right?
Right.
So there's no negotiation. So you can't use the expertise in my negotiating skills. So I'm there to just, help out, but
Okay.
facilitate. So you're gonna miss out on what I'm good at.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
what are you good at?
I'm good at negotiating for you, and you have our team here. So
Okay, because I usually like to go to the listing agent, because I think they negotiate better for me.
well, I'm gonna get into something else actually that might change your mind if you want to wait one moment.
Okay, I'll wait.
So I'm gonna go over disclosed dual agency, and I say disclosed because anything undisclosed is illegal.
Okay.
So if that were to happen, say you're interested in a property that is being listed at Lillian Montalto's agency, I would have to, that then becomes disclosed agency, and there's actually another form that we go over at that point in time. So that means that I would be sharing my loyalty among two parties, and I can't give competing lawful instructions.
Can't give or can't receive.
Can't give or receive. So neither party, I have to stay neutral in that regard.
Okay.
Does that help you understand that better? And I still owe you confidentiality in that situation. So now we're going to go over what I want to discuss. So when you hire me, this is a non-designated agency. So that means when you work with me, you're getting 20 agents or 30 plus years experience here. And if I have any questions or if they know of a property that would interest you, they will let me know.
Mhm.
So we're able to discuss that here. And a lot of other agencies don't do that.
Mhm.
If it's a designated agency, when you hire that person, you're only hiring the one person. So it's a really great environment here, and that's why I'm also going to be better at negotiating and finding properties for you.
Okay, so because the way I usually buy properties, I just go straight to the listing agent, because they're usually much more flexible on their commission.
Yeah, well, here, we value our commission because you're getting the whole team. And I'm very confident that with our marketing and our expertise and everything, we'll find you exactly what you're looking for. And we really listen to your needs.
Okay, so, okay,
Does that help a little bit more?
well, are you gonna charge me a commission?
Yes. So the commission for a buyer's agent is 3%.
Okay.
And
3%, why would I pay 3% when I can go to a listing agent and get it for free and not have to pay a dime?
that's because you're getting our value here, and you're getting our team, and I answer my phone all the time for you. I am going to be vigilant about your time
Mhm.
and my time as well.
How'd you do?
Excellent.
Very good.
You kind of dug yourself in a rat hole.
I know.
Okay.
Never say the percentage amount.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I
at
was
this
very
stage, though.
adamant.
Because that's why then he was asking questions to prove that point.
That's okay.
Right, so remember, you're gonna have this wide variety. I thought you did very well. The thing I liked at the beginning, you started to inject some humor in it, and there is some value in injecting humor into these very serious conversations.
It's dry.
It's dry, it's boring, it's fiduciary, it's all of that. But if you can inject a little bit of humor into it, I find that it kind of greases the wheels a little bit towards the understanding, or at least getting towards the end quicker, if you will. I thought you were very articulate in terms of the concepts. But again, two things. I'm trying to think
Yes.
that go ahead. And you said it, and Julie, I think you said it, I could be wrong, but there was this requirement that we have this fiduciary. There's no requirement that somebody has to engage us to have a fiduciary. This document, and the grander point is, all of you need to, the first words out of your mouth is that, yes, this is a disclosure. You all did that. You all defined what a disclosure was. One of you, I think it was just Luciano, I could be wrong, so I'm doing it from memory, is just, hey, this document, what we're disclosing here is the types of relationships you can have with somebody like me. So I would just get used to saying that. Yes, it's a disclosure, do exactly what you all said, but go to the point of what you're disclosing. It's disclosing the types of relationships that we can have. Okay? Does that make sense? There is no requirement under law that a consumer works with you in a specific way. It's our preference to work as a buyer's agent. It's our preference, or my preference, right? You can use the first person or the third person, however you want to do it, to say this is our preference because I want to leverage the collective experience of the office. And if you leverage the collective experience of the office, there's actually more than 100 years worth of experience if you think about it. Lillian's pushing 40 years, although I can't say that out loud. Bob's certainly pushing 40 years. I can't say that out loud. I'm pushing 20 years. You're almost at 100 right there. Throw in Tyler and Wayne and everybody else, you're easily over the 100-year mark. And so that's a great way if you're comfortable doing it. And remember, when you're presenting for the next year, somebody might actually ask you, Mariah, how long have you been in the business? And your response is going to be?
Longer than I can remember.
It feels like
Your response is gonna, right?
Yeah.
Right? So again, it sounds funny, oh, that's a cute response. Yeah, it's a cute response, but remember when you're in sales, you're trying to deal with objections, and you're never gonna, when you're qualifying people, you get a sense for what their objections are, but you're never gonna be able to predict when you're gonna get it. That will be a question you get, especially if you're stammering and stumbling on your first couple, they're gonna do that. And that's the one thing I learned early and often from Bob and Lily was, you're gonna get asked this question, so be ready to deflect it. To deflect it, you say, feels like forever. Okay? And if they say, no, really, yeah, I mean, the company's been around for 20 years. No, how long have you been doing this? It really does feel like forever. The more you deflect it, the less likely they're gonna come back and keep asking you and pressing you. You might get that one engineer type that is so focused on getting the answer to every question on the list that he has in front of him. It's gonna happen, so be ready for it, right? And that's true of any of the objections that you, because there's really 5 main objections in real estate. They're all just different flavors of them. You'll learn that over the course of time, okay? But do you all, now having done this and kind of gotten it out, do you get the sense that you understand the information? Yeah, and I do too. I think you get what the information is, so now it's really just a matter of practicing and kind of getting your shtick down and what's your way of doing it and making sure that you're interacting with the person, because it's very easy to go through Old Car and go through all 6 elements but never ask a question. Versus saying Old Car, well, you know, I use these 6 elements, but obedience, always for obedience. What do you think obedience is, right? You can have that kind of a conversation, maybe not on all 6 elements, but at least on 1 or 2 of them to try to engage them into this, what are otherwise a very boring lectural-like dialogue.
I think it relaxes me more too if I can like joke with the person a little bit and just like it takes some of that like nervous energy off. I don't know.
Well, that's my mechanism personally. I prefer it as bad as most of my jokes are, right? I'm at least trying to inject some humor in because I know that humor makes me more comfortable, and it helps me to deflect the reality of that I'm not doing a great job. But it also breaks down, and I have found over time it makes it easier for me to talk to people, right? Many years ago, I was not the guy that wanted to be sitting in a crowd talking to people because I was very nervous about it. Yeah. Now I could care less what people think. So.
Yeah, I get nervous.
But that's
not one-on-one, but like in a larger crowd, and like you all here.
right. But if you're comfortable now with them, if we had asked you to do this on day 1 when you hadn't met 2 or 3 of us.
Yeah, that'd be harder.
Right? But remember, there is a chance that the people that you're, not a chance, the people you're meeting with and having this discussion with, you've met once, and maybe you had a less than a 5-minute conversation with them, but you've been able to set the appointment.
Yeah.
Or you may not have met because you talked to them on the phone, if it's a listing appointment. Right. So you got to know this stuff cold. questions about the presentation? Okay, now we'll kind of do the same thing when we get through the exclusive right to buy agreement, and we'll do the same process. And then after that, I'll do a full-on buyer presentation, and one of you can be the buyer and try to, you know, hang me up on things, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. What's that?
So I call being the buyer.
Okay, so I know you'll be a jerk.
I'll try.
It's all good for you. But that's what we're trying to achieve here, is to give you a foundation to work off of in practice. Okay, did you guys have a chance to read the exclusive right to buy agreement?
I have
I have the wrong form.
number 8.
What's that?
I have the exclusive right to sell.
It's very similar,
I don't
but
have the exclusive right to sell form, I didn't get that.
Did
I
I?
got, like, got one and I went to.
is the email that I thought I sent it to everybody in email, no?
Exclusive right to buy or
Yeah, the exclusive right to sell.
I got the buy, not the
Yeah,
sell.
that's the
No, I
one.
know, I forgot it and I went to, and I grabbed it. I grabbed the wrong,
Oh,
sorry.
So we didn't
Eric,
get
so I don't know if it came through in the email because I just actually had her send it to me because you could see it like it's a PDF, but it didn't like attach. I don't think.
Okay.
Unless it was just, I opened it on my phone and then I opened it on my computer. I'm like, it could just be me, but I don't know if anyone else had trouble with that.
No, I apologize, I'm sorry. Do you have one to?
I do. Yeah, I have it.
Okay, okay.
I sent it this weekend.
All right, so what is this? What is this document?
Exclusive right to buy agreement.
What does that mean? Contract. It's a what?
contract.
Contract. What makes it a contract?
binding.
Okay. A contract means it's binding.
Agreement between two parties.
So binding agreement. When you say binding, what does that mean? What's another word for binding?
Like, if it follows through.
Legally
enforceable. Legal, right? So it's a legal document. So when they sign it, they have to know exactly what's in there and they have to agree what's in there. What are the elements of a well, so it's a contract, it's a legal binding agreement, right? Or an agreement, binding agreement, another word for legal.
Is meeting of the minds something? Meeting of the minds?
Well, meeting the minds has to occur in order for there to be, so that would be one of the elements of a contract. Meeting.
Is consideration something?
Consideration, yep. But before we keep with the elements, what kind of contract is this? What's the type of contract?
exclusive.
Well, it's exclusive, which means what?
Just one.
Can you see this, Julie? The white's kind of,
It's a little hard to see.
I forgot my other one.
I
Okay.
shouldn't even see it. Does it say elements in?
Elements, so it's meeting of which one? Meeting of the minds?
We're talking about types of contracts, so it's an exclusive, which means what?
And no matter who sells it, you're getting commission.
Is that what it means by exclusive? Give me the layman's definition of exclusive.
Exclusive right to sell. Oh, okay.
What's the,
You're the only person.
It's just one,
it binds you to me and me to you. Okay, so if you go off and talk to another real estate agent and you get them to do work for you, you're still gonna pay me. So don't go do that, okay? But in law, there are different kinds of contracts. So like a purchase and sale is a contract between who? A buyer and a seller, right? And what's happening in that contract? The seller's agreeing to sell their property, real or otherwise, personal property, like on a bill of sale, and the buyer's agreeing to buy that. So in this contract where there's an exclusive, right, what's the exchange? What's happening? Who's getting what in the deal?
Bilateral.
It's bilateral for sure, which means what? There's two parties, right?
Your services.
Okay, so what kind of contract do you think it is?
Service contract.
It's a
Service
service
contract.
contract. Okay, why is it a service contract? Because I'm agreeing to do something and provide a level of service in exchange for what? Payment for that service. Okay, jumping back to the elements of a contract, we talked about there being a meeting of the minds. What does that mean?
two people coming, like, agreeing, or?
So two parties agreeing on the same terms and conditions, right? T and C, terms and conditions. Which in real estate has to be in writing on, because of what law?
Statute of frauds.
Statute of frauds, right? It has to be in writing. There's consideration, Jessica told us there's, rightfully so, there's consideration. What does that mean? Didn't realize you were taking a law class, did you?
There's some form of, I don't wanna say, I guess it could be money, I mean, you know what I mean, like some form of exchange.
Exchange is the great
Good job.
word. Exchange. And in this case, when it's a service contract, it's an exchange of a service for money. And the bill of sale, it's an exchange of personal property for money. In the case of a real estate purchase and sale agreement, it's the real property in exchange for money. Notice the operative word in each of those contracts was exchange. Okay, what are the other elements required to make a valid contract?
Can't be illegal, nothing in it can be illegal.
Okay,
Has to be written.
not illegal. It's not a bad description. Okay, what else?
Sound, I can't think of the word, but like everyone has to be of sound mind, I guess.
Can't be drunk.
Can't think of the word.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take sound mind. Yep.
Competent.
Yeah, confident.
Competent.
Another aspect of that would be there can't be any duress. What's duress?
So doing something because you feel like you have to, kind of like threatening,
Being forced to do
or
something,
something.
right? Or doing something when you can't really do it, like under duress.
Which makes it workable.
Correct. What else? It has to specifically identify the parties. Technically, in addition to identifying who the parties are, what is their address? Honestly, their phone number. Although I've not seen anything, any case law that says you forgot a phone number in a contract, therefore it's voidable. Consideration, we talked about, let's see, what else has to be, what are the other elements?
I wish I could remember.
So,
Signature.
what's that?
Signature. both parties.
Signatures, yeah. Signatures of the parties. Can contracts be open-ended?
Yes.
Give me an example of an open-ended contract.
Is it the option?
It was a trick question.
So no, maybe. What
No,
did
there has to be a start and an end date. You can like start a new contract, but there always has to be a start and an end.
Okay, no problem. We're among friends here. So this also holds true for the parties when you're writing offers. You can't write an offer with no closing date. Because if there's no closing date, you have no transaction. So there's a start date, there's an end date. More specifically, and as you go through the different types of contracts, especially in a service contract, there's always a duration, right? There's a start period and end period. All right? So you'll see as we go through this, and I bet now having read this document, you're kind of going, okay, I see where those different pieces are, right? So let's go through it. Meeting of the minds just means if both of us sign it, there's a meeting of the minds. We agree that this is the contract. Can we make modifications to it? We sure can, but with mutual agreement. Consideration, what's the consideration? You're gonna pay me if I do the work that's described. You're gonna pay me what's in the contract as payment if I do the work that's described in the contract and do the job that's required. It's not illegal. That thing has been read by more lawyers than I care to admit. Sound mind, competent, duress. You're going to assess that. Please don't do this in the bar after shots of tequila, because somebody could say that you are under duress and not of sound mind because you were drinking alcohol. The parties, we identify the parties in there. If you flip it over on the back, there's a place for the buyer to sign and add their information. Our information is pre-printed in there. The signatures will be there, and then there on the front, paragraph 3, I believe it is, or 2 rather, is the duration. 2. Okay. So we have this service contract called an exclusive right to buy agreement. The exclusive part means what? That I'm exclusive to you, or this agency is exclusive to you as the consumer, and you as the consumer are exclusive to this agency. Yes, sir.
What does it mean? So I was thinking about us being exclusive to them, where if we get entered into dual agency, wouldn't that mean we're not exclusive to them anymore?
I don't know. Doesn't.
Because I know that they're saying they're exclusive to us and that they're not going to work with another agency.
Mhm.
So if we're exclusive to them, then we'd be saying we wouldn't say for buying, for a buyer, we're not going to work with another buyer. But like you mentioned earlier,
Flip the page over.
if
Paragraph 9. What does it say?
Is that already in it?
I got it right. I
It's
think I got it.
about
Those are all.
national origin,
Nope.
ancestry,
Paragraph, I'm sorry, 8.
agency information, non-designated.
Consent to dual agency.
Paragraph 8 on this one says other buyers, right? Am I reading that wrong, Luch?
There's 2
There are 2
sections.
Hey, look at that. Fired the manager.
That's
The second paragraph 8, how's that?
I don't think nobody ever noticed that.
I noticed something on the contract you gave me, remind me.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the second paragraph 8 says what?
it says it is agreed that broker or broker agency may represent other buyers who may be interested in the same or similar properties.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So there's this way for us to work with other buyers, right? But we still have this exclusivity with them, right? Now, in all of my years, I can only remember once or certainly not more than a couple times, where we represented more than one buyer on the same property putting offers in. You know, as long as it isn't Eric with 2 buyers working, putting offers on the same property, that's pretty hard to do. And for me, that's not unlike dual agency. You better take one and pass it off to somebody else to make sure that they have our undivided attention. Because who's the contract with? The agency, not the individual agent.
What if you know one of your buyers is like definitely gonna be able to put more of an offer than the other one, and like the other one they probably wouldn't entertain because it's like way below asking or something, then if you just, if they're, I don't know, does that make sense? Or not really?
You can, right, but
It wouldn't be the right thing.
I'd still, the right thing to do is to say, you're interested in this property, you're considering an offer, and you're interested in this property, considering an offer. Just for full disclosure, your contract is with my company. I'm a little uncomfortable having 2 buyers putting offers on the same property because now I've got 2 people competing. I'd much rather have one of you go with over and up. So in my case, I'd be saying to Lillian, can you work with Mariah? I'm gonna work with Jessica. And just so that Mariah, you can have full unfettered conversations and you guys can decide and strategize about what you want to do with the offer without it impacting Jessica or vice versa, right? Because if I go into that conversation and have a conversation with Mariah about what she's doing, is it possible that that could influence how I respond to Jessica or vice versa? Of course it could.
Yeah.
So I don't want that, I don't even want the appearance of that impropriety, even though the law and the contract says I'm okay to do it. Right? Because a lot of times when you're caught up in lawsuits, it has more to do with perception than it does the reality of what you're actually doing. And you could be the best agent in the world and to the best degree possible show that I didn't let my conversation with Jessica influence my conversation with Mariah or vice versa. But wouldn't it be easier just to say Mariah's with Lily and Jessica's with Eric? They went and did their best. There's going to be there's less opportunity for one of them to be unhappy as a result of, hey, something she said influenced you on my offer. I didn't get my offer because and imagine if one of the offers wins, have that conversation. Oh, by the way, Jessica, I just want to let you know, my other client, Mariah, got the property.
Sounds bad.
Yikes. Not a fun conversation. I think I'll be on vacation that week.
Won't do it.
Permanent vacation.
On permanent vacation, so. All right, so it's important in here that on the top section where it has the name, we're identifying who they are. The price, give us a range. Don't give me $432,000 only. Give me a price range, put a price range in there. What's their bottom and what's their top, roughly speaking? Can this change? Can people go off the reservation and do something different? Sure. Location, what's either the general geography or a list of towns that you're likely to be spending time in? And the description of the property is, are we looking at, single families? Are we looking at condominiums? What's the minimum number of bedrooms? What's the minimum number of baths? Keep it as generic as possible, okay? The first paragraph that's there that's unnumbered says what? Julie? Don't read it.
Buyer,
You already read it. You should just be able to tell us what it says.
the buyer agrees that they'll work with the agent and they can work with them in all of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, the licensed agent.
So if let's reverse it. I'm working with you, Juliet, but I'm only licensed in Massachusetts. How do I show New Hampshire? I'm not licensed in New Hampshire.
Well, since you have the contract with an agency, one of the agents that are licensed in New Hampshire can show the property in New Hampshire.
Good answer. So the way to describe this paragraph is slightly different, is to say this contract is with the agency and it covers the states that we're licensed in. Where are we licensed? We're licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I'm in the process of getting my New Hampshire license, Julie, so if in the event you decide that you want to go to New Hampshire, I'll make sure that we loop in one of the people that is licensed if I'm not licensed by then, so that we can make sure you're taken care of. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as an aside, just so that you're aware, because the agency police and the laws are out there, if before you have a New Hampshire license, you have somebody that wants to go to New Hampshire, you cannot show the property. We used to allow it. We've gotten too many close calls, so we have, yes. Okay. So if you have somebody, you have to work with somebody else that is licensed in the company to handle that client in New Hampshire, period, end of discussion. No more showing, and kind of quasi doing it or whatever else. We've had too many close calls and there's too many of them happening now. We have too many New Hampshire transactions when it was once or twice a year, it was a different issue, but now it's multiple times. So yes, ma'am.
So if I know someone, like for example, my friend and her boyfriend want to get something in New Hampshire, and it's time for them to do that, and say I still don't have a New Hampshire license or something like that, I pass them off to someone else. Is that also me passing off the client and my commission?
You're going to end up getting a referral fee for it, right? It will always be your client. The person that works with you in the office is working with you and on your behalf, if you will, for all intents and purposes. They're not going to stay your client, but you can't practice real estate in New Hampshire because you're not licensed there.
So then you wouldn't get a commission because it's not something.
You would get a referral fee,
Okay.
right? So generally there's some type of splitting of the commission between the two parties because you're not licensed, but it's your client, or not your client. Let's say you say, Eric, listen, these people, they need to go write an offer today and do all this. Okay, I'll do it. I'm gonna, when I generate it, because I'm technically the one generating the fee because it's my license that this is all going under, then I'll pay you a referral fee. And we agree on that in writing ahead of time, so there's no question. So they will always remain your client as far as we're concerned internally, but we have to show an external that they were working with a duly licensed agent in that state.
Okay.
I don't want business to ever forego any business just by virtue of you don't have a specific license. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a fair compensation program for both parties, but the person whose license you're operating under has to be compensated. It's not fair to them to go spend their time, money, and effort to go do this for you and not get compensated and support, right? But it's your client, so you're entitled to some compensation as well.
Okay.
Yes.
If we were licensed in Rhode Island as well, because I think it's transferable between these states. I think you have to watch like a 4-hour course. Say we knew someone, are we allowed to work there or no? at this age?
So you can't because the agency is not licensed. So you either have to affiliate with a broker down there,
Okay. Got it.
which I can't see us ever agreeing to,
No,
right? And you can still be compensated, right, for referring your clients out. So I did it this weekend. I have a client of mine that we've been looking in Massachusetts. I've sold them a couple houses. They listed their house, sold their house, sold them a house, listed that house, sold them a new house. They're looking for a new house now again, and they just decided that, you know what, we'd consider Connecticut. Okay, well, I'm not licensed in Connecticut. So I pick up a phone and I call somebody I know down in Connecticut and say, hey, can you work with my clients? I'm not licensed there. And if they buy a house for you, you agree to pay me a 25% referral fee for picking up a phone. I've made some good money by picking up a phone and saying, well, you work with my clients out in California because I'm not licensed there. Okay, but this contract, just to circle it all back, covers only where the company is licensed.
So New Hampshire.
So New Hampshire, Mass. Why? Because you're contracting with the company, not the individual agent. So, for example, if somebody contracted with Lillian or Bob, although I think Lillian's license is hard, but let's pretend it's not, both are licensed in Michigan, right? But if they contracted here using this form, even though Lillian's licensed in Michigan,
Yeah.
this form would not cover that because the form is with who? The company. And the company's only licensed in New Hampshire and Mass.
So there's no point in us at this point getting a license somewhere besides those two states for now.
Well, Massachusetts because you're here,
Right.
and New Hampshire because it's 7 miles that way,
Yeah.
right? And we're starting to do a lot more business, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of business to be had up there because live free or die, right? And that's how they operate in real estate up there. So I think there's a lot of money to be made. Yes, Julie.
So Eric, to your point where like if we were to get, we're working on our license for New Hampshire, but say our client is looking both in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, so they haven't decided, then do you work with, like, say Jessica has her license in New Hampshire, I don't. Do we work together so for New Hampshire, she shows them, for Massachusetts, I show here, and it's like.
Yep, and listen, yep, and you guys decide how you want to compensate or share compensation or not. Does she get, are you going to split it down the middle in general because you just really have no idea where they're going to buy, or have you been working with them for a year and now they're just deciding to go into New Hampshire because they've been outpriced? And again, I'm not here to tell you what the two of you ought to do. What I am here to do is to tell you is that you better have something in writing so that when the deal comes together, a couple things don't happen. One, remember, when every deal that gets done in this, I have to produce what's called a transmittal, which tells me where all the money comes and goes in a transaction and who it gets paid to from the company. And it gets paid to that individual based on where you are in the commission tiering. If there's a share or some type of revenue share, let's call it that, between two agents, that needs to be defined before it happens. Because the last thing you want to be doing is getting to the closing and all of a sudden Jessica goes, well, I did all this work, what do you mean I'm not getting paid? Now there's this issue and animosity between two agents in the office. It's not going to happen, not under my watch. So you guys have to define that up front or when it happens. And I want that defined in writing, signed by both parties. Because if you're working with somebody and it's 6 months later, I can't remember what I said 6 months ago.
Right.
Your notes can remember.
What's that?
So your notes can remember what you said.
Exactly. You've never had that happen, have you?
No.
Never. Okay.
So I actually didn't know that. So I have family in New Jersey and stuff like that. So if they're thinking of buying a house or anything, all I have to do is call an agent in New Jersey and say, these are my clients, and then I get a referral fee.
You have to fill out a form though. Make sure that before you give any contact info, you always fill out the referral agreement with them.
Yeah, so the way it works is, so just by virtue of it, remember that as a member of this company, you have to be a member of the Northeast Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
You have to be a member of NLS, right? If you get a New Hampshire license, you have to be a member of the New Hampshire NLS. You're already a realtor member, you don't have to be a secondary member anywhere. And you're also a member of the leading real estate companies of the world, which is the largest third-party affiliation of real estate companies for referrals. And we have a requirement that we're supposed to refer to to other sister companies within that network. And So that's how we do most of the referrals, but that's not to say that, you know, we know lots of people personally. We'll turn a little bit of a blind eye. If you have a personal relationship with an agent in another state and you want to refer that to them, okay, we're not going to get so hung up on it really needs to go through leading real estate companies of the world.
In the morning meetings, you would just say like, I have someone that wants to buy in Florida, anybody knows someone?
And
It's
then
like the morning
usually
meetings are
Julie will
also-
reach out if you don't know somebody. Then like I didn't know anybody in Connecticut, so I said, hey Julie, can you find me somebody within leading real estate companies of the world that's down there? They spoke to a relocation. They looked it up because we had a system to be able to look that up. They looked up an agency that was in the town that we were looking for. She spoke with the relocation director. Within an hour, I got a call from one of the top agents in the company saying, I understand you have somebody to refer. And I had a nice, long, engaging conversation with them. I talked to them about their history and my client's history, and it sounded like a good match, so off they went. Right? And for that conversation, you know, on an $800,000, 25% of the buy side on an $800,000, that's, you know, a couple of grand are gonna be landing in my pocket for a phone call. Take it, why not?
Yeah. That's interesting, I didn't know that.
What were you saying, what were you saying about you have to get something signed before?
The referral
Phone call?
agreement.
Before
Yeah,
you
so
phone call?
once Julie either makes that introduction or if you know somebody, there needs to be a referral agreement that's signed by the brokers of record. So I'd be signing it on Lily's behalf because you don't have to track her down. I have the authority to sign all of that, which just agrees that there's this payment, there's this exchange of money. Because remember the umbrellas from last week?
Yeah.
Business is done from broker of record to broker of record, whether it's within the state or across state lines. So nobody's gonna cut you a check from the people in Connecticut from William, believe it or not, William Ravis, not these folks, but another William Ravis down in Connecticut are the people that accepted the referral. The check isn't coming to Eric, the check is going to Lillian, and then Lillian takes the cut and I get my piece of it, right? But it's, everything goes through the broker. Okay. Other questions? It's 4 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Oh, sorry. For those of you that have children. So what we're gonna do, so on.
Tomorrow? No.
No.
not tomorrow.
No tomorrow,
Friday.
here.
I wrote down a question.
Go for it.
In the video that I was watching, you said something about there's no guest speaker anymore on Thursday.
It wasn't this Thursday, I got the date wrong, it's next Monday, the 14th,
Okay. And then, there was one
Okay.
other thing,
8 to 3 or 4. The whatever the 14th is, Monday or Tuesday, again.
at 8 a.m.
Obviously, I'm the wrong calendar guy.
At 8 a.m., right?
At 8 a.m.
And then, the volume kind of went a little low, but you asked a question that said, what agreements do consumers and agents sign? And I didn't get the answer to that in the video.
We just went over one.
Oh, we did? This.
Good question. Thank you for paying attention. So, so there's no meeting, so tomorrow I'm out of the office, so there won't be a session tomorrow. So the next session is Friday from 1 to 3. Okay, we're gonna just keep going through this form. Okay, so we'll speed up in terms of other topics once we get through this and 1 or 2 other forms, but these are the forms you need to get down quickly because you're generally gonna be working with buyers faster than you're gonna be working with sellers. That's why we do it this way. Other questions about today or anything that we talked about last week? Julie, anything?
Nope.
Nope. All right,
No.
Jonathan?
No.
Jessica,
I think it was helpful, so I feel better.
Madison,
I agree.
Luch? So what I'd encourage you to do, and I'll say it a couple hundred times going forward, is try to find either one or more scripts and dialogues partner where you can actually sit down on a regular basis. There was one other agent when I came in 100 years ago, and actually every Wednesday morning, before we had Wednesday morning meetings, that's where they actually came from. We'd sit down and he'd play buyer or seller and I'd play agent and vice versa, just to be able to practice and get these concepts and get this stuff to flow off of your tongue. like that, it would be wise for you to do that. I also sent out for Jessica, Mariah, if you have questions about the
Vulcan.
calendar and Vulcan or the calendar invitation I sent out.
Yeah.
So I can spend with a couple minutes with you afterwards.
Yeah.
For Madison and for Julie, once you guys are licensed, and Luciano, once you cut over. Every Monday, I like to do a 15-minute coaching session with all of the new agents. So we'll just feather you into that process, and we talk about, really it's about helping you get up and running and support you in your prospecting efforts, because if you're not prospecting, you're never going to generate enough business for yourself over the course of your career. And if you are prospecting, you will make millions in this business, literally. So we want to make sure you get off on the right foot, and that you're doing that, and that you're setting yourself goals, and we're holding you accountable to those goals to help you build the right habits.
Would you have time today, everybody, to go over that?
I can spend 5 minutes right now, and then I got to get this event up and running.
Okay. Yeah.
That's okay.
It's soon.
It's soon. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Julie.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Did you get a test date yet?
No.
Have you sent in your stuff yet?
2 weeks ago.
We're waiting for the board to approve it.
It took like 2.5 for me.
Yeah. We should hear from them soon. They should get an email saying.